Have you ever stopped to think about what would be the worst moment in history to get stuck with a broken time machine? Because let me tell you, if you think living without the internet or running out of phone battery is bad, imagine breathing toxic air, running from chicken-sized insects, and facing heat so intense it burns your skin just by breathing, all in a world where trees barely existed. Sounds exaggerated. Well, that's exactly the kind of surprise the timeline has in store. And the craziest part, all of it actually happened. These are historical events so extreme and mysterious they barely seem real. Yet they took place right here, on the same planet you live on. And that's when the question nobody asks, but everyone should, comes up. Would you survive in one of those eras? The interesting truth is that, contrary to what we learn in school, Earth's past was far weirder, more explosive, and scarier than any sci-fi movie. And the wildest part, nobody ever told you the story this way. We're going to show you everything with clarity, mind-blowing facts, and a perspective few dare to explore. Because here, we don't simplify the past. We reveal what's most astonishing about it. So buckle up, because this journey will make you question everything you thought you knew about our planet's history. With every time jump, a new challenge, a new world, and a new reason to ask, how did anything survive that? Imagine yourself in a place where the heat is unbearable, like standing inside an oven. The ground's so hot you could fry an egg on it. The sky is covered in smoke, and there's not a single animal in sight. The air is thick with gas and smoke. It's hard to breathe. This was Earth right after the biggest extinction event in history. The Permian extinction. Over 90% of plants and animals had vanished. Even the oceans became deadly, lifeless and toxic. It was so silent, it felt like the world had hit pause. And yet, some tiny little creatures began to push back. Life is stubborn. Now picture this. You, completely alone with a broken time machine, stuck in this terrifying place. And guess what? This is only the beginning. What comes next is even weirder. If you thought that was strange, wait till you hear what happened to the climate. It was as if the whole planet turned into one massive desert. The heat was so extreme that even the coldest regions felt like ovens. That's because a bunch of volcanoes erupted at the same time and released a massive amount of gas into the atmosphere. That gas, CO2, made the Earth way too hot. Fun fact, even plants couldn't grow properly back then. The planet was nearly empty of green, shade, or life. It looked like a disaster movie, but it was all real. And here's the mystery. Despite all that, some tiny creatures still managed to survive. How? Nobody really knows. And that's just one of many questions this era left behind. Now imagine, if things were that bad on land, what do you think was happening under the sea? Get ready for this. The oceans were like poisonous soup. No joke. The water was hot, dirty, full of toxic gases, and nearly oxygen-free. Fish, coral, all gone. Anything trying to live there died quickly. But guess what? Microorganisms, tiny life forms you can't even see, still found ways to survive and set the stage for everything that came later. Another fun fact, this era had sand dunes as tall as skyscrapers. It was like living in a giant nightmare. And it's wild to think that such a terrible time was also a hidden restart, as if the Earth had hit reset. Now, if that time traveler managed to escape this hellish place, where do you think he'd go? Here's a hint. The next stop has giant plants, cat-sized bugs, and humidity everywhere. Now picture the time machine whirring back to life, and suddenly, you land in the middle of a massive, humid forest filled with towering trees and giant leaves. The air is so rich in oxygen you can actually feel it when you breathe. Fun fact, there was so much oxygen that bugs grew huge. Dragonflies with wings the size of eagles, centipedes the length of sofas, and beetles almost as big as a car. Everything was green and wet, like the whole planet had turned into a living jungle. But hold on, it wasn't just beautiful. This place was dangerous too. With so much oxygen in the air, even a single spark could start a massive wildfire. One mystery scientists still debate. How didn't these fires burn the whole forest down? And to make things worse, sudden thunderstorms appeared out of nowhere, with lightning and thunder turning the forest into an action movie. This forest was nothing like what we see today. There were no colorful flowers or fruits. The trees looked more like giant ferns and thick mosses that spread everywhere. Fun fact: a lot of the coal we use today came from this ancient forest. Fallen trees and plants would pile up and eventually turn into coal over millions of years. That's a mind-blowing bit of history, right? Our time traveler walking through this jungle would have to be extra careful not to slip on wet leaves, or get ambushed by a bug the size of a house cat. Think mosquitoes are annoying now. Back then, one of them could literally cast a shadow over you. Despite the wild appearance, everything here was oddly balanced. But, of course, nothing lasts forever. As in any great adventure, the landscape starts to shift again. Slowly, this lush forest begins to change. Plants start looking different. The soil becomes rocky and dry in places. The climate turns more unstable. Here's an interesting fact. Animals of this period were still learning how to live on land. It was common to see creatures with tiny legs slipping around, like toddlers trying to walk in new shoes. And there's a big mystery here. Why did so many animals decide to leave the water and risk living on land, despite all the challenges? It was a time of great transformation. And guess what? The next time jump will take our traveler to an even stranger world, full of giant fungi and eerily quiet landscapes. Now the time traveler makes another leap and lands in a place that looks like another planet. The sky is clear, the air is dry, and the silence is so deep it gives you chills. Looking around, he sees massive towers made of fungi. That's right, fungi. Fun fact: these fungi, called prototaxites, could grow up to 20 feet tall, around 6 meters. They ruled the landscape because, at that time, real trees barely existed. There were no birds chirping, no crickets, not even the wind whispering through leaves. Just silence. A world frozen in time, like Earth was still deciding what to do next. Strangely enough, this weird place was the stage for one of the biggest life transitions ever. The move from water to land. And to think it all started with tiny creatures testing the limits of where life could go. Saying the ground was alive wouldn't be too far off. The soil was covered in mosses, lichens, and fungi, all trying their best to support the little life that existed. The air had very little oxygen, so even breathing was hard. Animals. There weren't many. The few that had crawled out of the water were still figuring out how to use lungs that barely worked. Fun historical fact: this was the time when the first fish with legs began to appear. That's right, fish with legs. They dragged their heavy bodies through the mud in a weird mix of swimming and crawling. Imagine seeing that in real life. The weirdest part: many of them acted like they were tasting land for the first time. Some liked it and stayed. Others ran back to the water quickly. It was an era of trial and error, where one wrong move could be your last. And through all this, the landscapes had a strange, magical beauty. It was like Earth was going through its teenage years, confused, awkward, but trying to grow. The time traveler wandered through a world that felt temporary, like it was still under construction. One mystery that still baffles scientists is what happened to those giant fungi. Why did they disappear? Why did they vanish if they were everywhere? These are questions that still puzzle anyone who studies Earth's past. And there, among rocks, moss, and the sound of his own heartbeat, the traveler feels something new is about to emerge. But before he can make sense of it, the scenery shifts once again. And this time, the time jump delivers something completely different, a brilliant and unexpected message. The day ends in this quiet Devonian world. The sky begins to darken, and with it comes a strange feeling. It's not just the cold or the wind, it's the silence. A silence louder than 1,000 sounds. No crickets, no frogs, no voices. Just the soft rustle of giant fungi swaying with the breeze. You look around and realize you're completely alone. No faces, no voices, not even a sign of life as we know it. And that hits you deep. It's not just loneliness, it's a mix of fear and emptiness. And the craziest part, that feeling doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. Imagine being in a place where everything feels frozen, where even time seems to stop. The colors are dull, There are no familiar smells, and the wind sounds like it's whispering secrets you can't understand. Your mind starts playing tricks. You hear sounds that might not be real. You see shapes in the shadows of rocks and fungi. Your brain, so used to movement, noise, connection, starts inventing things just to stay sane. That shows how deeply we need others, connection, affection. It's one of those fascinating facts we only realize when everything is taken away. The hardest part isn't the danger, or the cold, or the thin air. It's the feeling of being completely out of place, like you don't even belong in the world anymore. And then you start to wonder, how did our ancestors survive in such lonely environments? How did humanity evolve in the middle of all this nothingness? These questions echo in your mind, along with the realization that sometimes the greatest strength you can have is the strength not to go mad. But the night isn't over yet, and surviving it will require something even more powerful than courage. You realize you're stuck in a very ancient, very strange, and extremely dangerous world. But there's one thing that could help you stay alive: calm thinking, using your mind. Because in places where everything is hard, where the air is thin, food is scarce, and you're completely alone, your brain is your greatest tool. And no, you don't need to be a genius. You just need to pay attention, observe, ask questions. Intelligence isn't about knowing everything. It's about looking around and understanding what's going on. For example, if the sun starts disappearing, it's time to find shelter. If the wind changes, maybe a storm is coming. These little details save lives. Imagine you have a backpack and there's only room for one thing. You can choose strength, speed, or intelligence. The right choice: intelligence, because even the strongest get tired. Even the fastest trip and fall. But those who think find solutions where no one else sees them. In this ancient world, there's no map, no GPS, no one to help. So every step has to be thought out. Every move must have a reason. It's like a giant survival game. And the winner isn't the strongest, but the one who understands the mysteries around them. And this is still true today. Instead of running from fear, you can learn from it. Instead of crying in hard times, you can ask, what is this trying to teach me? Here's the interesting part. Even in the worst moments, intelligence becomes a kind of superpower. Thinking before acting, taking deep breaths, remembering everything you've learned, that's how you survive. And more than that, that's how you grow. Maybe, in the middle of this crazy world full of bizarre historical facts, you'll realize that the greatest secret of life isn't to fight against everything. It's to learn from every single step along the way. Now tell me, after all this, which of these eras would you least want to be stuck in? The heat of the Triassic, the giant bugs of the Carboniferous, the alien-like fungi of the Devonian, or the loneliness of a world where even silence won't let you rest? It's wild how Earth's past sounds more like a horror movie than a history class, right? But these historical facts are real. And the more we discover, the more we realize we've barely scratched the surface of the mysteries buried in time. If you enjoyed this insane journey, drop a comment below. Which part blew your mind the most? I'm super curious to know. And hey, this was just the beginning. There's a lot more coming your way. More curiosities, more lost worlds, more questions no one else dares to ask. But we will explore them together. So you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and come with us on this journey to uncover the hidden side of history, like you've never seen before.